Patrick, can you just walk us through what a conflict of interest meeting would happen? What would happen during the meeting? So how, like, walk us through that. Like, so if I send something to you, what would you like me to send to you? And then what happens with it afterwards?
Sure. So it's a lot easier. It's just kind of to have a conversation. There's not really a checklist of specific things like an intake form that I would share with people to say, these are the things that I need to know about everything you're doing. But generally speaking, it's understanding what relationships you have, what external relationships you have, so that we can identify what might be actually create a potential conflict or perceived conflict. And then what are the activities in which you're engaged or hope to engage, and some of the details about those. It can get a little bit more nuanced depending on the type of interests. For example, the intellectual property. It's a very straightforward. If you have a relationship with a company and you're doing consulting work, and then that company's funding your research, that one's pretty easy to figure out. Okay, there's a relationship here. It can be a lot more nuanced if you have intellectual property that's maybe not even the subject of your research, but being used as a tool to evaluate something else. Then it's not as directly conflicting, and so we kind of have to work through what is the mechanism by which the activity you're doing could have an impact on the interest that you have. And that's usually just kind of borne out through conversation, and then it's the next step is, okay, well, what can we do to mitigate this if we need to at all. Sometimes there are interests that aren't really related, they're not going to be affected, or they're interests that aren't very significant, and we don't need to do anything more than just disclosure. And then other things that are more significant, or the research is a little bit higher risk, require a little bit more work to sort of figure out and put some mitigating factors in place. So a typical meeting is really just a conversation. Just come with what you're hoping to do and what interests you have and what questions or concerns, and we kind of walk through it.
And then what about the committee meeting? What happens at a committee meeting?
So the committee itself meets monthly. It's faculty based, and we actually recently refreshed our membership a bit. But we've also have folks on there who have been on the committee for 10 plus years and really know their stuff. We also have an external member, so because this committee looks at both individual and institutional conflicts, and so when we're considering CHOP's interests that might be affected by research that we want to engage, or in which we want to engage, we've got that external member who can kind of give a truly unbiased opinion, and it's been really helpful to the committee. So there's only certain kind of potential conflicts that we bring to the committee. There are a lot of things that over the years they've delegated authority to the COI office to administratively approve. So if it's animal research and the related interest is intellectual property that hasn't been licensed, it hasn't generated any revenue, we don't have any reason to believe that it's the next best thing since to be massively commercialized, then we won't necessarily bring that to the full committee for review. We have some kind of standards that we can apply and say, you should disclose this in your publications and presentations and to the other members of the study team and things like that. The type of things that do go to committee will work really closely with the investigators to sort of prepare the case, so to speak, for the committee. So we'll want all the details of what is it that they would like to do. If they're going to be PI, or are they a co-investigator? What are the aspects of the research that are really important for them in which to engage, and what are things, as Zev mentioned earlier, they might be able to hand off to someone else. And we'll put that information together and bring to the committee for consideration, and kind of walk them through the analysis that's required by the regulations, and then otherwise come up with a plan for mitigating those potential conflicts. And Janet, I see you have something to add, so I'll.
Well, I'm just, because you're being modest, so I'm gonna be less modest for you, and to say that one of the great things that Patrick can do, he's been with this program since we created this faculty-based committee, and while some of our members are new, he can really help telegraph for the investigator what kind of reaction they're going to get from the committee, both here and at Penn, because we have worked very closely with our Penn friends. And so he can really be helpful to be getting the researcher, whoever it is with the conflict, ahead of time. Think of, these are the kind of questions the committee might ask. What would we be able to say to help your case when this is brought to the committee? Because you're not there at the committee. And but there's always another chance. If the committee comes back with questions, or for some reason, unusually so, they want to shoot something down, there's back and forth. It's, you know, anything that can change that result, Patrick will try to do, but he's very helpful in saying, here's based on what we've seen in the past and the kinds of questions we typically get from the committee, here's what you might expect, and what can we do to strengthen the argument that this is manageable.